Helio Castroneves is close to signing a deal to race in the 2023 Daytona 500, and there could be a couple major retirements in the Cup Series, including Martin Truex Jr. and Kevin Harvick in 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start with talk about PacSun, as PacSun has signed a licensing deal with Formula One. PacSun is one of the biggest retail companies in the United States, so it's a really good branch out to Formula One, and they'll be selling F1 clothes as well. This is really good to see, and glad to see that PacSun has joined Formula One as a licensing company for Formula One. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dead On Tools. As it was announced yesterday that Dead On Tools will be expanding its relationship with Tricon Garage. It will be sponsoring Tanner Gray and Taylor Gray in 2023. The plan, I believe, is they will have 15 races each for each of the trucks. So really good to see the Dead On Tools will continue their partnership and their branding going into 2023. A big company that's been sponsoring in NASCAR for the last few years. Excited to see that Dead On Tools will continue to expand their relationship with the team heading into next season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Limeade Media. As was reported yesterday by TobyChristie.com, that Limeade Media is expected to set to release a 4-part docuseries about Justin Haley and his experience at the World Short Track Championship. This is really great to see that they're doing a docuseries, and the more docuseries you can have, the better. One of the most popular things online currently at the moment, especially on Netflix right now, is docuseries. NASCAR's tried a docuseries on TV. I think if they had on Netflix or Amazon, I think it would be extremely successful. That being said, it gets more people to know the drivers on a personal scale, and I think it's amazing to see, and we get to see more personality in the sport. I think that's really exciting and really awesome, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Landon Huffman. As it was announced from Mullins Racing yesterday that Landon Huffman will be driving one of their ARCA cars at the Daytona test in January. Landon Huffman, of course, has been racing with late models, has made some select ARCA starts for the last few years. It's really good to see Landon getting an opportunity. I think Landon is a really talented race car driver who's been racing for a very long time, and finally is getting an opportunity to test an ARCA car with Mullins Racing. I know he's made some ARCA starts, so really good to see him getting an opportunity, and hopefully he'll be able to succeed with the organization heading into 2023. I think this means he'll potentially, if he does well enough at the test with Mullins, he'll probably make some starts for the team next year. So really excited to see, and glad to see he'll be driving for Mullins Racing at the test at Daytona. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jeremy Clements. It was reported from TobyChristie.com that Jeremy Clements has his own fragrance, I think beard oil as well, that has been released. In addition to that, there's some other stuff that was announced as well. So according to this, Jeremy Clements only has 5 primary sponsor races to sell for 2023, which I think is the best for that organization. Kevin Hamlin is going to be joining the team as a spotter in 2023, and Mark Zetzer is returning as a crew chief. Now, I was expecting that Mark Zetzer was going to retire at the end of last year, but he will be coming back next year as a crew chief. I think having that crew chief has been on the team for a very long time is really great to see. Mark Zetzer is a really good crew chief, so it makes sense to bring him back. Also, Kevin Hamlin coming over as a spotter next year. That is a great pickup for Jeremy Clements. I think that will help Jeremy a lot. Kevin Hamlin's been in the industry for a very long time. He was Alex Bowman's spotter for a long time, and I think he still is Alex Bowman's spotter. Currently, really great spotter. And then obviously talking about for Clements, they can focus more on getting the cars a lot better with them having the primary spot, only a few races left to sponsor. I think that's a major step in the right direction, and very happy to see that Jeremy Clements will have his sponsors set for 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ohio tax. It is reported first by Jonathan Field, and multiple reporters, including JSki.com, have reported that the Ohio Supreme Court ruled unanimously that NASCAR was unlawfully taxed for broadcasting its races in Ohio. I believe from 2010 to 2015 or 2006 2010, they basically ruled that they had to basically pay a bunch of tax money. Well, that got overturned. This is really great to see. It means because it's basically on the racetracks and not NASCAR. NASCAR got punished for basically, I believe, and they got taxed really heavily. So I think this is really great to see, and awesome to see that this went in a good direction. Very happy to see this for sure, and glad to see that is going to be happening, and that they will basically gotten awfully taxed. And I think it was ridiculous that they got taxed as much as they did. So I think that's really good to see, and very happy to see that they are going to be able to go ahead and get paid back the money. Good to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the most popular top 10. As about a day or two ago on Monday, the most popular top 10 came out of the current drivers who are currently in the top 10 most popular drivers. And this was in alphabetical order. Here are the 10 drivers currently: Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, and Martin Truex Jr. The names I expected to be on the list: Ross Chastain after his Hail Mary move, Kyle Larson, who is extremely popular in the dirt world and the NASCAR world, Chase Elliott, which Hooters is sponsoring the most popular top 10, so he's probably going to win. I also did expect Ryan Blaney to be on there as well, and maybe Alex Bowman as well. And Kyle Busch too, because Kyle Busch does have a big following. The drivers I'm shocked to see on there: Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell, I like Christopher Bell, so it's good to see him on the list, but I didn't expect Christopher Bell to be on there, but he's probably got a lot of dirt fans. Also, very shocked to see the Martin Truex Jr. on there. I know Martin Truex Jr. has a lot of fans as well, but I'm surprised by that. There's some other ones I'm really shocked by, including Kevin Harvick, though Kevin Harvick does have a pretty loyal following as well. I think it's very interesting that those are the 10 drivers who are currently on the most popular top 10. A couple drivers we'll be talking about here later in this episode as well, by the way. But very interesting to see if that is a current most popular top 10. I was definitely a little surprised by that, but nonetheless, good to see that those are the most popular top 10. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about TJ Majors. As it was announced yesterday that TJ Majors is going to be spotting for Josh Berry in 2023. This is a major pickup for Junior Motorsports. TJ Majors, I think, is one of the best spotters currently in the NASCAR Cup Series, and also he has spotted for other series, including the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series as well. He was spotted for Dale Jr. for many, many years, and now he'll be spotting for Josh Berry. I think Josh Berry just got like I said, I think this is a massive pickup for Josh Berry going into next year. I think Josh Berry is an extremely talented driver, and he had a good spotter last year in Jason Jarrett, don't get me wrong. But I think having TJ Majors, someone who's been with Junior Motorsports and basically worked with Junior Motorsports in the past, and Dale Jr. in the past, I think it's great to have someone who's aligned with that team, and I think it's really exciting to see. So very happy to see for sure that TJ Majors is coming over to spot for Josh Berry next year. I think that's a big pickup, and I'm expecting big things for Josh Berry heading into 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR scanners. Now, it was reported from multiple people, including Taylor Kitchen and Bob Pockers, that it was reported from them that scanner subscriptions will no longer be available on the web in 2023. Now, Tim Clark clarified this a few days later, and basically said that there's a solution coming, but it sounds like they won't be available on the web. Now, one thing to note is that they are still going to be available on the app and at the racetrack as well. They're just not going to be available on the web. I think that's really disappointing if this does come to fruition. I think that is extremely disappointing. I know that there's been a lot of people want Race View back. It sounds like they're not going to be bringing that back, which I think is really disappointing considering you look at basically that. I think that would be a major disappointment and a major mistake, in my opinion, if they can't bring the Race View back. So Race View was one of the most popular things. It sounds like they're not bringing that back, which I think is really unfortunate. That being said, though, I'm not really surprised by the decision at all. I've seen some pretty bad decisions, and I think it's a little bit of a disappointment that they're likely not going to be bringing that back. Nonetheless, though, I'm not shocked and surprised, and it's disappointing, but it is what it is. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bobby Labonte. As Bobby Labonte announced yesterday that he'll be racing in the Smart Tour and Select Wheel and Modified Tour races in 2023 with Hermie Sadler's organization and Bill Stanley's organization heading into next season. Bobby Labonte, of course, is one of the greatest NASCAR drivers in NASCAR history. 2000 NASCAR Cup Series champion and winner of many races in the Cup Series. For the last few years, has been racing in the Wheel and Modified Tour and the Smart Tour as well. And I think has won some Smart Tour races as well. Great to see Bobby Labonte coming back and racing once again. I think Bobby will be very, very competitive. I know he's a little bit older now. I think Bobby is, 58 or 59 years old, so he's a little bit older of a driver. But that being said, having a guy Bobby Labonte race in the Smart Tour and racing again is really great to see, and hopefully Bobby Labonte can be very successful in the 2023 season. I'm wishing the best of luck to him, and happy to see that Bobby Labonte will be racing once again in the Smart Tour heading into the 2023 season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. As it was announced yesterday that Brad Keselowski is going to be entering the 2022 Snowball Derby and will drive the number 6 RFK Racing late model car. This is really, really shocking and major surprising news because Brad Keselowski, I don't think has raced many late model races before. This was a major surprise when this was announced, but I think it's really great to see that Brad Keselowski is going back to race in different forms of racing as well. And I love when I see drivers go out and compete. Now, obviously, Brad Keselowski, with him not having as much late model experience, I think that could be somewhat of a disadvantage for Brad going into this race. But I also think his experience in racing will help him a little bit as well. I think Keselowski's got a really good chance and a really, really good shot to be very competitive in the Snowball Derby. I just think it's fun to see that he's going to race in the Snowball Derby. It's great to see that he's branching out, doing other forms of racing, including late model racing, which is similar to the Cup Series, of course. And I think it also will help his experience in the next-gen car, because there's some people compare the next-gen cars to late models. So I think that's a really, really good and great move to see. And very happy to see that Brad Keselowski is going to be entering the Snowball Derby. I think it's great to see for sure. And glad to see that Brad Keselowski will be entering the Snowball Derby. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the ARCA East and West Series. As the 2023 ARCA East and West Series schedules have been officially revealed. Let's first talk about the ARCA East schedule. So ARCA East is only going to have 8 races in 2023. The beginning of the season will take place at Five Flags Speedway on March 25th, followed by Dover on April 28th. Then they'll race in the National Fairgrounds on May the 13th, and then a week later, they'll race at Flat Rock Park in May 20th. After that, they'll race at Iowa on July the 15th. Then they'll race at Indianapolis Raceway Park on August 11th. Then they go to the Milwaukee Mile on August 27th, and then Bristol will take place as a final race on September 14th. That will be a double with the main ARCA series. Not much to say on the ARCA East schedule, just only 8 races. I wish there were more races on the ARCA East schedule, but you don't have as many competitive cars, so it's not a surprise. Now let's talk about the ARCA West schedule, because there's actually more races on the ARCA West schedule heading into 2023. So the season's going to kick off at Phoenix on March the 10th, followed by Irwindale on April the 1st. Then they'll go to Kern County 3 weeks later on the 22nd, and then they'll go to Portland on June the 2nd. After that, they'll race at Sonoma on June the 9th, and then about a few weeks later, they'll race at Irwindale on July the 1st. Then they go to Shasta Speedway on July 29th, and then they'll go to Evergreen Speedway on August the 19th. After that, they go to All-American Speedway on September the 30th, and then they go to Las Vegas Bullring on October the 13th. Then they go to Madera Speedway on October 21st, and then finally, to end the season off, they will race at Phoenix Raceway on November the 3rd. Pretty solid ARCA West schedule. It's good to see ARCA West does have quite a few races. I wish ARCA East had more races than the ARCA West, but I think we'll see a pretty solid championship over there. Jake Drew, who probably will be returning to ARCA West next year, he'll be looking to defend his championship going into next season with I think the Bill McAnally organization, if I'm not mistaken, or the Sunrise organization. Who knows at this point? But really good to see that that schedule has been revealed. It's good to see those. There's really the last major schedules being revealed in the motorsports world. So it's good to see that more schedules are finally being officially revealed heading into 2023. And that is going to be the ARCA East and West schedules heading into 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about 2022 TV ratings. Now, we got a lot of Adam Stern reports to talk about today. In the first report, like I mentioned, we're talking about TV ratings for 2022. According to Adam Stern, NASCAR finished its 2022 Cup season up 4% in viewership from 2021 to an average of 3.04 million viewers. That is an increase that was expected with the Daytona 500 running on time. That was an increase that was expected. Yes, it's good to see an increase, but only having 4% increase to Daytona 500 being there is not the greatest. Now, this is the first time since 2018 that we've seen at least 3 million viewers in a NASCAR Cup Series, basically watch on average throughout the year. But throughout the end of this year, especially near the end of the year, we had a massive drop-off in viewership, except in a few races. Now, why was this the case? I think one of the reasons is the season is way too long. I think a way you can do it is you can shorten the season up. You're going up against the NFL. You got to find a way to end the season a little bit earlier. I'm not saying we need to shorten how many races are in each season. We can keep the 36 races, but find a way to shorten the season a little bit. I also think the playoff system plays a major factor in the ratings not being as up as I think they could be. I think if you basically only took out one of the rounds and maybe lengthened the regular season, because the regular season does a lot better than the playoffs do, it seems like, I think that could really be something that could really, really help. They just got to find a way to be able, in my opinion, to get that increase up going forward. And they need to find a way to Daytona 500 because I don't think the 500 is going to increase in the next year. You can't expect the 500 increase. If the 500 increases and the 500 does good, that will help NASCAR going into 2023. But the reason it's also important is because of the next upcoming TV deal. We've talked about the upcoming TV deal, and they're wanting at least $1 billion at least per each year. They're asking for a lot more money on this upcoming TV deal. So that's why we're talking about these TV ratings. So at least we're at least getting an increase, but we got to find a way to increase it more going into next year, especially with negotiations. And with a deal expected to be done by this point next year, we got to find a way to increase the TV ratings. So hoping NASCAR is looking for solutions in regards to that, but at least we're headed toward a right direction there. Hopefully we can see an increase, a little bit more of an increase, but we need to see more of an increase going into next season, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Las Vegas Strip. Now, as many of you already know, Formula One will be hosting a race on the Las Vegas Strip in 2023. Now, according to Adam Stern, who did another really good report on this, he reports that the CEO of the Las Vegas Strip, there is a actual pretty good possibility that Las Vegas Strip could host NASCAR races if the Las Vegas F1 race at Las Vegas ends up going well. Of course, like I mentioned, it'll be racing in the Las Vegas Strip in 2023 Formula One, and it seems like there's interest for NASCAR. Now, this is not the first Formula One track that's come up in the last year that's talked about wanting NASCAR to come over there. The Miami Street Course back in May said that they have shown some interest in wanting to host NASCAR races. Now, I would definitely be for this if a couple things. Number one, we need to see how the Chicago Street Race goes. I'm very, very nervous because the action car struggled on the road courses. I'm very nervous of this car. Well, I think it will be better than what we could have seen in the past. What I will say is this. I think they basically do have to find a way to make sure that the race, here's the thing, they got to make sure the racing is good before they go with an action car, before they go ahead and make this move. To me, in my opinion, I think it would be definitely cool to race on the Vegas Strip because we could take maybe one of the races from Las Vegas away. But I'm very nervous is they're going to want to have the schedule go long. Now, there have been some rumors and rumors from people that they could extend the schedule to maybe a 40-race schedule heading into like 2023. There's been some rumors about that. I don't know if I want to see a 42 or 40-race schedule. There's been rumors around that. Here's the thing. I definitely would love a race on the Vegas Strip if the race does go off without a hitch. And I know there's been rumors of Pittsburgh hosting races. I know other cities would have been interested, like Mexico City. And I know that Vegas would love to have NASCAR racing, maybe some IMSA racing. Now, I think IMSA would be very successful on the Las Vegas Strips. I think that would be a good area to kind of start looking at to kind of branch at. That being said, though, we'll have to wait and see in regards to that what happens with the Vegas Strip. We got to see how successful the race is there. But I will say, I think it'd be cool if we could race on the Vegas Strip. I don't know if they want to do it on the Formula One weekend, but they're not going to want to close off for a different time of year, especially. So we're going to have to definitely wait and see what happens in regards to that situation. But it's really good to see the Las Vegas Strip is interested. They're interested in running some Formula One races, and I think it's really fascinating and very interesting for sure. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But it sounds like they're very interested in running some races there. We'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll see if it can be very, very successful, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox Sports. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that according to him, Fox Sports is expected to continue to rotate its third booth position in 2023 versus having a full-time analyst join Mike Joy and Clint Boyer. While Fox reasoning is unclear, this would give it the chance to possibly bring in Kevin Harvick in 2024 if he retires after 2023. I'm definitely a little bit surprised by this move. I think last year they tried this, this year they tried this in 2022 with him having this third person in the booth. They had a lot of different people come in. You had Tony Stewart come in for a few races, Danica Patrick come in for a few races, Matt Kenseth came in at Auto Club, Michael Waltrip did it at Gateway. They had Kenny Wallace in for Gateway a little bit as well. They have Larry McReynolds and Jamie McMurray do it, and a couple other big names, including Chad Knaus, did it as well. And while I think it was good that they tried it in 2022, I'm a little surprised they're not going with a third full-time analyst, and I'll explain why. You have two people that are absolutely available. You've got Larry McReynolds, who I think is an absolutely good commentator, who is a really good crew chief side of things. And you would basically have your crew chief, your driver, and your main analyst. I think you need to have that kind of combination there. And I think Larry McReynolds brings a lot of good analysts as well. And he still is very in tune with everything going on. You also have Jamie McMurray. Jamie McMurray is a freaking amazing commentator, does a really good job. The races that he did this year, he was really, really analytical and was very, very serious with what he did. So it would really make a lot more sense for them to bring in. Now, that being said, when I talk about the analysts going into next year, if they're doing this because of potentially Kevin Harvick retiring in 2024 or 2023, that would make a lot more sense. But with them expected to have a rotation of the booth going into next year, who would I like to see in the booth? There's a lot of people I like to see. First one I like to see is Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch won't be running full-time in 2023, as it was announced he won't be running full-time because of the concussion issues he had, unfortunately, affecting his career. Kurt Busch does a really good job in the trucks broadcast. Make a lot of sense for him to bring him in for a bunch of races next year. You've got Chad Knaus, another guy I'd like to see. Chad Knaus is a really good commentator. The 2 races he did with Fox, he did a really good job, doing a really good job being an analyst in his series. I think the bulk share needs to be between, though, Jamie McMurray and Larry McReynolds. Both of those guys were 2 of my favorites this year. Larry McReynolds did a lot of the races with Fox this year and brought a lot of strategy and analytical side of things. Also, Jamie McMurray, like I mentioned, really good at what he does, and I think he needs to be in the Fox booth going into next year. Also, Tony Stewart. I like to see Tony Stewart do a few races. I know Tony Stewart's been frustrated with NASCAR over the last few weeks, and he really is having more fun than NHRA. But I thought Tony Stewart was a really great addition as well. Also, bring Matt Kenseth back for one race. I think that'd be really, really fun. At the end of the day, though, whatever they decide to do with the Fox, it is what it is. I get Fox trying to change stuff up, though, and I think it makes sense to try to change things up. You've got to sometimes make some pretty big changes, and I'm definitely for them making changes and trying to fix some things with the Fox group. I think that makes a lot of sense. My big concern, though, when it comes to them continuing to change it up every time, I'm very nervous that it could get very, very, very fragmented and it could get very, very stale. So I get what Fox is trying to do. They're trying to change it up, and I get that they're trying to make changes over there. Hopefully, one of the biggest things for me is that they can continue to make changes. Now, one thing I will say is that at least the Cup Series and Xfinity Series side of things when it comes to the broadcast for Fox, they're actually really, really good side of broadcast. I think the Truck Series, they've got a lot of work over in the Truck Series that needs to be done, and ARCA as well. Trust me, they've got issues that are messed up if the Truck Series and ARCA booths that need to be fixed, including a new lead commentator needed over there. But I think Xfinity was the best, and I think Cup definitely got better as the year progressed. So I'm hoping in 2023, with all the names that we mentioned here, hopefully all these guys can do a really good job in their respective positions. I understand what Fox is trying to do, and I think it makes a lot of sense to do it. I'm just nervous about it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that, but it sounds like they'll have a third person in the booth going into next year, and there's some big changes going on in regards to that in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kevin Harvick, Mark Truex Jr., and maybe a couple other drivers, as we're talking about an article that came out from Austin Kanensky, as there are multiple drivers that could potentially retire at the end of 2023. The 2 big names that keep getting mentioned are Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr. Mark Truex Jr., who is returning in 2023 to drive for the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing next year. We don't know how long Mark Truex Jr.'s contract is going to be. And Mark Truex Jr. is one of the oldest drivers currently in the NASCAR Cup Series. At the end of 2023, Mark Truex Jr. will be 43 years old. And unless Mark Truex Jr. decides to extend his contract with the team next year, I think there's a very good likely chance and a very strong possibility he's going to retire. Now, Mark Truex Jr. does retire. He's nearly won 30 career NASCAR Cup Series races. He's won a championship, so he's definitely going to be a driver who makes the NASCAR Cup Series Hall of Fame. There's also possibly Denny Hamlin. If he doesn't resign, he could retire, but I know Denny Hamlin probably will just go over to his team. Let's talk about Kevin Harvick, though, because I think this is the guy that more than likely, of any driver who could retire, who I think is actually going to retire in 2023. Kevin Harvick has been in the NASCAR Cup Series now since 2001, when he took over for Dale Earnhardt, who had tragically passed away in a crash in the Daytona 500 in 2001. Kevin Harvick drove for Rich Schultz Racing from 2001 up until 2013 with a lot of success, including winning 22 or 23 NASCAR Cup Series races, including winning the Brickyard 400 with the team in 2003 and also winning the Daytona 500 in 2007. Kevin Harvick goes over to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2014 and has now won 37 races in a span of 7 or 8 years, including winning 2 races in 2022. He also has won the Southern 500 with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2014, 2 Pre-Cup 400s in 2019 and 2020, and he also has gone on to win a Cup Series championship with Stewart-Haas Racing. And I know that Kevin Harvick, that Gene Haas was trying to convince Kevin Harvick to come back in 2024 and sign a contract extension, but Kevin Harvick is 47 years old. And at the end of 2023, he will be 48 years old. And Keelan Harvick is currently racing. Keelan is 10 years old and will be 11 at the end of 2023. So Kevin is going to want to focus, I think, on spending time with his family. And also, we talked about it, but it sounds like Kevin Harvick is also maybe looking to jump into the Fox Sports booth maybe some point in 2024. And I think he's done a really good job commentating races over the years. I think he does a really good job leading the commentary, especially with the drivers only broadcast. I think he does a really, really fascinating job over there. I think it'd be really, really fun and fascinating there if he did that. Now, talking about Kevin Harvick, he is absolutely a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think when we look back at his legacy, I don't think a lot of us appreciate what Kevin Harvick has been able to accomplish and been able to do in his career. He's won 60 Cup races. There's only 9 or 10 drivers who've been able to accomplish that in NASCAR history. He's won a Cup Series championship, which only like 30 or 31 drivers or something along those lines have been able to do. He's made it to the championship for like 5 or 6 times, which only like 2 or 3 guys have been able to do. And you look at what Kevin Harvick's been able to accomplish in racing throughout his NASCAR career. He is a legend of NASCAR, and he will go down as a driver who brought Stewart-Haas Racing really to the promised land. Now, I know that Kevin Harvick is probably going to fall off a little bit next year, and I think even for a guy who's past his prime, he's definitely past his prime, very few drivers can do what Kevin Harvick's done. The only drivers have been able to accomplish what Kevin Harvick's been able to do are drivers like Harry Gant and Mark Martin, who were in their 50s and winning races. But Kevin Harvick's nearly 50, and it is possible Kevin Harvick does come back in 2024, 2025. It is very possible, but I think Kevin Harvick just is ready to get out. I think there's a good chance that he'll announce his retirement sometime even this year in 2022. It wouldn't be surprising or shocking if he does decide to retire and announce his retirement for 2023, because he actually was originally going to retire in 2021, but he was convinced from multiple people, including I think Mark Martin as well, for him to come back and race for the team. 2021 was not a great year for Kevin Harvick nonetheless, but 2022 was still a very solid year, and he could have made the championship four if things had gone his way. I think, like I said, when you look back at Kevin Harvick's legacy, I think we're going to appreciate everything that Kevin Harvick's been able to do. He's not the greatest driver ever, but he's definitely one of the best ever to race in NASCAR. Won 2 Xfinity Series titles, won a lot of truck races. He's one of like 25 or 26 drivers who have been able to accomplish the triple feat, winning Cup, Xfinity, and trucks. And it's just been incredible to see what he's been able to accomplish in his NASCAR career, in his long NASCAR career. But he's been in the sport for a long time, and I think his impact, if this is truly it for him, this has been a great career for Kevin Harvick and a very successful time for Kevin Harvick. So I hope it's not really it for Kevin Harvick, but it sounds like there's a good chance to retire, and it's going to be dearly disappointing nonetheless. So I really hope this isn't it for Kevin Harvick, but I've got a feeling that 2023 is going to be the last season for Kevin Harvick. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Helio Castroneves. Now, a few months ago on this channel, we talked about the possibility of Helio Castroneves racing in the 2023 Daytona 500. As it had been reported from multiple people who were at the SRX race that if Julio won the SRX race at South Boston, he was going to be able to have an opportunity to race in the Daytona 500. Well, according to Adam Stern, as he reported yesterday, Helio Castroneves is getting closer to getting a deal done to race in the 2023 Daytona 500 plus several SRX races next year, according to the SRX executive, Donald Hawk. Currently there are 2 teams that have been in the conversation to do it, and these 2 teams have been running for this are Trackhouse Racing and the Money Team. Let's talk about these 2 organizations that he is currently running. The first one, Trackhouse Racing. Why would he run for Trackhouse Racing? Well, number one, Trackhouse Racing is a really competitive organization. But there's another big reason why. They have a third car that's going to be running in select races in 2023 called Project 91. That Project 91 car is meant for international drivers. Helio Castroneves really fits that mold, and I think that would be a really good ride for Julio to run. Now let's talk about the Money Team. The Money Team's the other organization. This is a team I would not love to see Julio run with because I don't think the money team is a fast organization. Granted, they, I believe, have finished in the top 30 every single race they've entered, which is very impressive for a team like the money team, a team that doesn't run a lot. They've been very consistently running around the top 30, so that's really been really impressive. They had drivers like Connor Daly and Kaz Grella be able to run with their organization. Well, I think they ended up finishing in the back in 2022 at the Roval, but they've entered select races, so they are a very serious organization. Now let's talk about Helio Castroneves. The last years of Helio Castroneves' career, really since around 2019 or 2020, he has had a really incredible resurgence. In 2021, he went on to win the Indianapolis 500. In 2022, he won an Astor Race at South Boston and also was able to win the Rolex 24 with Meyer Shank Racing. I think it's just been incredible to see the incredible resurgence of Helio Castroneves, who also was part of Meyer Shank Racing winning the 2022 IMSA Championship when they went on to win the championship at Motel PT Le Mans. I just look at Helio Castroneves and I think of him racing in the Daytona 500. I've been wanting Julio to race in NASCAR, and he has shown interest in racing in NASCAR the last few seasons. And you think about what Julio has been able to accomplish in racing, especially his last few years. He's won 4 Indy 500s, which only 4 drivers have now done that. AJ Foyt, Al Unser Sr., and then, of course, other drivers have been able to, and Rick Mears have all been able to accomplish that, winning 4 Indianapolis 500s. And he also, I think, has a really good chance to win his 5th Indy 500, becoming the first driver winning 5 Indy 500s ever in 2023. As he is returning to Meyer Shank Racing, the rumors he was going to leave the team, but that ended up not coming to fruition. And he's really found his footing and his place with Meyer Shank Racing as well. And I look at in 2023 being a big year for him in IMSA. I think he's probably going to be with the team that's probably the favorites going into the Rolex 24 next season. I think it's just so fascinating to see that Castroneves wants to run this event. He's got basically a lot of support from a lot of people, and a lot of people really want to see him get and run the event. Now, this confirmed with this expected, this would be the 40th driver to be confirmed. So we would have a full field for the Daytona 500. There have been some people who were scared. We weren't going to get more than 40 drivers, but it sounds like we're going to have at least 40 cars. There is a very strong possibility, at least for the Daytona 500, we could see at least maybe another few drivers enter. It is very possible 3F Racing is going to enter. We know that they just entered a late model race at the South Carolina 400 with Christopher Tate. They're expected to run a select number of races next year. MBM, they've not announced their plans for 2023 at this particular moment, though I would say they could enter 1 or maybe even 2 cars in the Daytona 500. We know that Team Haysburg, they're expected to run the Daytona 500 as well. They're a team that I would think could run 1 or 2 cars. You've got other organizations like NF Racing who could also enter, and NY Racing, who could also enter, and you've got other organizations who can enter out of nowhere. Currently, there are 4 uncharted entries entered, 36 full-time entries, and there are 40 entered at this point. We know that Beer Motorsports will have Austin Hill. Zane Smith will be in a 3rd front row car. Jimmy Johnson is entering the Daytona 500 in a 3rd Petty GMS car. It's unclear what ride he'll be entering. But I think it's just so cool to see how a driver like Helio Castroneves, who is showing genuine interest coming over to NASCAR and racing. A lot of people wanting that interest from drivers like Julio in the past. And I think it's just really amazing to see that you've got new faces who are showing interest in coming over to race and racing once again. I think that's really awesome to see, and glad to see that Helio Castroneves is showing interest in racing in the 2023 Daytona 500. So really great news for sure. Hopefully gets announced soon, and it probably will be announced in the not-so-distant future. So there's going to today's Law NASCAR News and Motorsports News video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel, notifications on, to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links are below over that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are the thoughts of Helio Castroneves expected to run in the 2023 Daytona 500? Let me know in the comments below. And what will Kevin Harvick's legacy be when he retires in 2023, as expected? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel for Thanksgiving, because it will be Thanksgiving tomorrow, we will be having a Q&A on this channel. I have a video that you should go answer your questions on. Friday will either be maybe the NASCAR Cup Series predictions or the playoff predictions for 2023 could be coming out Friday. Saturday will probably be another team preview, and then Sunday will probably be actually the regular Cup Series predictions on the channel or the other video dropping on the channel. And we've got other content on the way heading your way as well. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.